better, in a way, because I've chosen you and me. Okay.
Yeah, of course it's okay. Happy Valentine's Day.
Do you think I should go up and see Kent? And it's been over an hour.
No need.
David. Lilia.
Kent, you needn't have come down. I was just going to come up. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Well, let me just serve Sabrina. I won't be a moment.
Okay. Kenton, I'm really sorry for losing it like that. Lillian and I feel really silly.
Me too.
Don't. You've got nothing to apologise for.
It was your shouting. I mean, I've not felt anything like it before, but my body just kind of reacted, like it went into panic. It was frightening.
I'm so sorry, Kenton.
Yeah, the doctor talked about this. He said I might have dreams and flashbacks, relive it. Things might cause an unexpected reaction.
Which is to be expected, I suppose.
Yeah, but I didn't expect to feel so upset. You and Lillian arguing just then, that would have been nothing to me a few weeks ago. But today, I can't explain it. This must sound so pathetic.
It sounds perfectly understandable. You've been through something really awful. It will take time to recover. Mentally, as much as physically.
Yeah.
And I'll help. Starting with making sure this place runs smoothly and quiet. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. That would be really great.
Sticking with the Valentine's theme, The Moral Maze is at 8 o'clock tonight. Here's Michael Burke to tell us more.
Love's a tricky business, as St. Valentine found when he was beheaded a few hours after sending the first Valentine card. On this Valentine Day, for the first time, only a minority of British adults are married or in civil partnership. Half of our children are now born out of wedlock. There's an argument about outcomes. Statistically, children from unmarried homes do worse on average by almost every metric. But big moral questions too, about love and commitment, at a time when Till Death Us Do Part is so much longer than it was. The morality of marriage, The Moral Maze, in 3/4 of an hour.
Now on Radio 4, here's Front Row with Nick Ahad.
Hello. Tonight, the remarkable story of the little Ukrainian village that took on the might of the invading Russian forces. As the second anniversary of the start of the war in Ukraine approaches, we talk to the BBC foreign correspondent who was there and whose book is now a gripping audio drama. We dive into the controversy surrounding the Hugo Awards, the biggest prize in science fiction in this or any other universe. And one of the most acclaimed directors in British theatre joins us in the studio to tell us about her latest reworking of a dark fairy tale. Emma Rice has turned her attention to The Legend of Bluebeard.
Stay safe, he said, stay home, and warm we loved and said not yet. We're fearless and strong, and life is long and will quiver when we're dead.
A little musical taste of Bluebeard, and Emma joins me live in the studio. We both watched the show this afternoon, and you were crying as much as me, right?
I was. I've seen it more times than you, and I was still in tears, damn it.
Well, we'll find out why that is later on with Emma. But we start tonight in Ukraine, and an extraordinary true story with the most unlikely cast. Almost 2 years ago to the day, the tiny town of Voznesensk became a fulcrum of the Russian invasion. The Russian army arrived with tanks, helicopters and hundreds of soldiers. They met a small farming town, a 32-year-old mayor, and a defiance that would come to define the conflict.
Any idea what we should do now?
No idea at all, sorry.
Should we get some guys together, get some cars, go to Mykolaiv?
What's the point of that?
I know. I don't know what to do.
What do you want me to do?
We need lists.
What?
Everything.
mouthful.
I know. Cars. Men who got guns. Men who've served. Work it out, will you?
They haven't told you what to
They
do.
haven't told me bugger all.
Greg Golpacci as the mayor of Voznesensk, and Helga Ronan as Natasha in an extract from A Small Stubborn Town, adapted from the book by Andrew Harding. Pensioners took up arms, old ladies wielded Molotov cocktails, and reservists fought, some of them to their deaths. The incredible story of the few days of resistance is told in A Small Stubborn Town, a book by the BBC correspondent Andrew Harding. The book has now been adapted by Jonathan Meyerson into an audio drama, and it will be broadcast next week on Radio 4. The drama has a mixed cast, Ukrainian, British and Russian actors. One from Ukraine came to the front row studio this afternoon.
My name is Alexander Yatsenko and I play a character of Zhenya in A Small Stubborn Town. He's a commander and he had a military experience, unlike other boys who see the weapon for the first time. For him it's difficult. He realized this danger, but he must not show that. Even when the Russian soldiers get to them in 1 minute, he must not show that something is wrong, you know? If he gives up, then other boys also will.
What do we do? Captain, what do we do? Where is the radio? Who's got the radio? Somebody give me the bloody radio! Shit, they're going to come straight for us. We're not supposed to radio through. Get orders. It's a whole Russian army.
No one said we'd be... How do we stop an army?
This is crazy impossible. I've never fired a gun.
Why didn't they warn us?
I was studying acting in my hometown, in Kiev, and when the war started I moved to Salzburg, in Austria, to continue my acting degree. And then I decided to move to a bigger city to develop as an actor. Yeah, now I'm here. I think people don't perceive news because it's just facts. The radio drama can help them to dive into the story and feel something.
Count three.
You scumbags!
Give me the phone.
That's my battery. We get 8 boxes every year, sometimes 10.
The phone, babushka. Give him your phone, Sveta.
You just drive your stupid tanks in here and knock it down. 14 years we've had that trick.
Right. One.
Why should I give you my phone?
It's orders. We have to stop you warning your army people.
You're a thief. You're going to sell it.
Come to protect you. You're free now.
No, who?
The fascists. Zelensky and his Nazis.
You do that by destroying everything. Oh, here.
Thank you, babushka.
There is an actor in our play, Ivan. He's a Russian and we became friends. I met him when I came to London and I have no place to sleep and he helped me. I think we don't need to judge people by their nationality or passport. What matters is what they do.
Alexandra Yatsenko there, one of the cast of A Small Stubborn Town. And Andrew Harding joins me from Donbass in Ukraine now. So Andrew, it seems like a story that's made for Hollywood, the plucky underdog taking on the might of the Russian military. Is that how the village saw itself?
To some extent, yes. I think they knew that they had a choice to make almost exactly a year ago. They knew that the Russian army was coming sweeping across the south of Ukraine, and plenty of towns and villages en route were basically closing their doors and waiting for the proper army to come and hopefully stop them. But Voznesensk's mayor and the leaders of the town decided to make a stand because they felt they had to protect their bridge.
But it made no sense. It was a motley crew. It was Dad's army. These were reservist people, literally old ladies fighting. It made no sense that they thought they could hold off the Russian army.
It didn't, and I think they knew that, but they felt they had to try something. And remember, of course, there were people with experience of fighting because they'd been at war since 2014, not in Voznesensk, but there were people who'd fought further east in the Donbass. And so they had some reason to think, well, look, some of us are not entirely new to conflict. But then, of course, help arrived at the very last minute.
And you have someone in the shape of a hero, the closest thing to a hero with Ghost. That's his code name, isn't it?
That's right. He was somebody who'd been fighting in the Donbass and came up with a plan to try and channel the Russians, this huge armoured force, to try and channel it into an ambush.
So why was this village so important in terms of the invasion?
Because the Russians were trying to essentially surround Ukraine and to get along its Black Sea coast to the big key port city of Odessa, which President Putin was convinced would rise up in support of Russia. It didn't, of course, but they needed to get across a big river, a couple of big rivers, the Dnieper, which they crossed, and then the southern Don River, and they got blocked right down by the coast of the Black Sea, so they had to come upstream, and the next town along was Voznesensk with its two key bridges, the first one over a river called Dead Water, and it was there that the townsfolk decided, look, we've got a chance to stop this.
Well, the Russians, as in fact we heard in that clip, and you hear all the way through, they seem surprised by the resistance, not just because it's a tiny little village, but they were expecting almost to be welcomed as liberators, and that goes on to set the tone for what was to come. So did you see this story in this little village as sort of the whole conflict in a microcosm?
I did. I mean, I've written a couple of books before, and I'm sort of increasingly looking for something that wasn't simply a continuation of my sort of day job as a foreign correspondent. I wanted to find something that felt more like a novel, and that I could write in the form of a non-fiction novel, like a previous book I've written about a double murder in South Africa, to take myself out of the equation and to sort of do very long interviews and deep dives into these characters, to tell through this one tiny story, like 3 days of fighting, the bigger picture of the defiance, and also just the sort of ordinary characters. It's sort of the Archers meets the 6 o'clock news, to give it a kind of Radio 4
I think that you should get that on the poster. I think that's a perfect example. It sounds like the way that Malcolm Gladwell finds these tiny stories and extrapolates these big things. You must have thought that you'd struck gold when you came across this story.
I did. The first person I met was a woman called Svetlana, a sort of Mother Courage figure, a grandmother whose cottage, she sort of dragged me around by the wrist and showed me the cottage where she lived, which the Russians turned into a field hospital and then a prison as well. They locked a few people up in her barn, in her shed, and she was so garrulous, and it turned out she had her own very complicated history, which I thought really got into this sort of crisis of identity in these borderlands between Russia and Ukraine. And I knew then that potentially I had something that could work as a sort of microcosm of the war, particularly given the fact that we still don't know. You know, I'm sitting here in another small stubborn town that actually got occupied by the Russians, then completely destroyed and is now liberated, but the front lines are still only a few kilometres away. There's a boom constantly throughout the day and night here of artillery, and there is a sense that this conflict is unresolved. We don't know which way it's going, and this story managed to capture something of the defiance rather than being a sort of unfinished business.
It makes a wonderful story. It also makes for a great audio drama. How much involvement have you had in turning it into that audio drama?
Jonathan Morrison came to me and said he wanted to do it, and I kind of said, go for it. I'd never written a drama before. I did actually turn my earlier work, set in South Africa, into a 5-part podcast, which I found absolutely fascinating, trying to find the kind of episodic hooks that would keep people interested each day, the kind of that tension, which was very different from the actual structure of the book. So I was very excited to see what Jonathan would do, and how he would strip out a story from a much longer work in terms of the book itself, and condense it into a radio drama.
And as we heard, you have this mix of actors. You have Ukrainian actors and Russian actors. Did any of them have concerns about reaction back home, as it were, to this drama and this book?
No, I mean, I've had a little chance to spend some time with some of them, and it's great to see Alexander there, making friends across the borders, if you like, in the middle of this conflict. And no, I think we were very keen, obviously, to make sure that this was, in as much as it could be, a Ukrainian-led business. And I'm very glad that the book, although it hasn't been translated into Ukrainian yet, I'm hoping it will be, that it's had a good reception in Ukraine, and that, I've shown it to people in Voznesensk, and, I hope that people feel that it's captured some truths about this, very misunderstood often conflict.
Right, and 2 years on from the story that you're telling, I wonder if you think it's important for drama and I guess publications like your book to tell those stories from the Ukraine conflict.
I do, because I also think, you know, from what we're seeing here today, this is not going to end soon unless something spectacular happens in Moscow. Everyone here is gearing up for a long war, and people are switching off. You know, we're back here to try and emphasise how important what's going on here is. That it may be deadlocked at the moment, but it's not going to be forever, and it needs focus, and it needs new ways of bringing people's attention back to this, and I hope that, you know, drama and films and all sorts of things can keep the focus on this extraordinary European war.
And not just attention, but also perhaps even influence people's opinions, right?
Yes, exactly. And I mean, that's what we try to do with the drama and the book, is to sort of explore the nuances, because people simply, a lot of people don't understand that Ukraine has changed so much in the last decade or so, and Putin didn't understand it.
Well,
and this is a very different, young, inspiring place.
I think if people listen, they'll have a little more understanding. Thank you, Andrew Harding. And A Small Stubborn Town is on Radio 4 next Tuesday at 2:15, and after that it will be on BBC Sounds. Now, Emma Rice has been, for the past 3 decades, one of the most individual voices in British theatre. The former leader of Knee High Theatre and the Globe now runs her own company, Wise Children, and she's always been attracted to telling heightened stories and fairy tales on stage. She's tackled The Red Shoes, Rapunzel, her staging of the classic character was seen around the world, and now she's taking on the legend of Bluebeard. I saw the production this afternoon at home in Manchester. It's classic Emma Rice. It's funny, it's dark, it's thrilling. I found it perhaps even more emotional than some of the stuff I've seen by Emma previously. And of course, because it's an Emma Rice production, music was a key part of the storytelling.
But what if the bogeyman gets you? He said, please smile, and said, just right. We're fierce and true, we're black and we're blue. Surrender when we die. Little rings to say you love me. Little rings to say you care. Little rings to say my worries without a mother's breath. Little rings to say you love me. Little rings to say you care. Little rings to say my worries without a mother's breath.
The multi-talented and very musical cast of Bluebeard. Welcome to Front Row, Emma Rice.
Delighted to be here.
So what attracted you to the story of Bluebeard?
Oh, well, I wasn't attracted to it. I mean, it's a story that I've always wanted to avoid. I mean, who wants to tell a story of a serial killer? But as always with these stories, I woke up probably 18 months ago and it tapped me on the shoulder and I got it down from the shelf and I thought, it's calling to me. And I think I always thought it was about letting men have their secrets, and I realised actually that is not what it's about. It's about control, violence against women, and I felt the rage that many of us are feeling.
For people that don't know it, can you tell us in a nutshell what the story of Bluebeard is?
Yeah, charismatic rich man marries younger woman, says have free reign of my house, but don't go in this one room. What does she do? Goes in the room and finds the bodies of his previous wives.
That's a great précis, thank you very much. So why now? Why did you want to tell this story now? Why was it 18 months ago you said he tapped up you on the shoulder? Why now?
I think all of us I'm tired of the sort of the regular chime of women being murdered and controlled, and the high profile cases in lockdown, but they keep coming, and I think we've had enough. We're frightened, and the stress of that fear is too much.
And then Sarah Everard was sort of in your mind when you were writing this story?
And Zara Alina. I was particularly moved by her friends and family marching after her death, walking her home.
Yeah, and so we'll come back to those parallels that you draw. The music's always a big part.
Yes.
How do you approach weaving music for your productions?
Well, that's easy. I work always collaboratively with my composer, my musical director, and my wonderful musical actors. So there's no dividing line in the process. It's not like we do the words and then we do the music. It's all created at the same time.
coming back to the story, is there a danger that Bluebeard is this extreme tale of male violence, and I wonder if that means it obscures the sort of more prosaic aspects of patriarchy that have kept women back that we're talking about, because this is a whole atmosphere, it's a whole environment, isn't it?
It is a whole environment, and I think the production really playfully plays with that. You know, I start with a magic show and a woman being cut in half, which is...
I was watching it out of the back and thinking, I've not seen that trick forever.
I know.
And I don't know how you do it.
I'm not telling you now, am I? Crikey.
I thought if I asked it like that, you might give away the secret.
No way.
Okay.
But isn't it amazing that we used to sit in our sitting rooms with our mums and dads and find that great entertainment? So I think through the amazing gateway of A Wonder Tale, you're able to explore really urgent issues through magic and entertainment and music, and then hopefully the production then brings that down to a much more real ending, and it reminds us that we're in this world now. But it's really important, you're talking about men, that I really didn't want to alienate men, because, you know, I've been surrounded by very good men in my life, noticeably my dad, and there's the theme of the good man that runs throughout this production.
You say that, but the quote is actually the last good man, isn't it? Is there a danger that you might leave audiences, male audiences, feeling demonised almost by this?
Oh no, and I don't think that is in the show. It's not the last good man. I think it's the rare species of good men suffered a blow when he died.
Right, okay, that's what that's about. I must say, as a man, I was left feeling it's my responsibility as a man to in the same way that racism isn't really the problem of the oppressed, it's the problem of the oppressor. That's very much how I felt as a man sitting there watching it, despite the fact that it'd been this horrific thing that this man had been doing on stage.
Absolutely, I think it's really important. And when we've had school bus parties in, it's often the young men that are on their feet, that are crying. I think it's really important that there's no dividing line here. We need to be a community, and of course theatre is a sort of physical representation of community, and we have men in the company who are good men and true.
You mentioned the young boys. When I watched it, there seemed to be a lot of young women there today, and they were so engaged with it, they were so clearly moved by it. Who are you making theatre for? Are you making it for them?
Oh, I make theatre for myself.
I've never done that before,
I do. I make the stories that matter to me with the people I care about in the way that I would like to see it. And then I hope that because we work collaboratively, that because a lot of other minds and dreams come into that it becomes universal. But if I don't want to make it, goodness me, nobody else does.
I hate to use the word. I've known your work for 20 years now. But where does this sit in your oeuvre? So we look at The Red Shoes, Rapunzel, Brief Encounter. Obviously, with Wise Children, you made a lot of Angela Carter work of late. Where does this sit with all of that?
I'm unbelievably proud of this piece of work. I wrote it myself. First time that I've been the sole writer of a piece of work.
You wrote Brief Encounter?
Well, I adapted it. I think Noel Howard had something to do with it.
We'll give him his props.
Yeah, exactly. This is all mine. So that was a big jump. And when I made it, there was a bit of me that thought, is this the end of a chapter or the beginning of a new one? And I think it's both. I think it's absolutely part of the canon of work and my Wonder Tales. But it has taken a more political path. And I'm really proud of that. The company has absolutely walked beside me making this amazing, thrilling, musical, funny and hard-hitting piece of work.
It is the first time I feel that I've seen that real world and modern world come into your work. I think of The Back Eye, which was, we didn't see anything in modern dress, and you really deliberately allow the current world to come in at the end, don't you? Yes. That's clearly a very conscious choice.
Yeah, I wanted to use all those levers that fairy tales can pull, but to really anchor it in the modern world and to allow that modern world to bubble through. I didn't want to hide behind the fairy tales anymore.
So when you first started, and you kind of hinted at this,